Common Council meeting to order on Tuesday, May 12th at City Hall. Call to order, roll call. Thank you, Jess. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, move on to item D, public comment period correspondence. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public that have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Again, one more time, any other public comments? Seeing none, move on to item E, approval of minutes November 28th, 2023 budget meeting and November 28th, 2023 regular minutes. We have a motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Varsho. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. F, staff updates. Introduction of Adam Cryer, Building Inspector 2, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you. It's always good to announce new employees and recognize them. Come on up, Adam, if you would. Adam joined our Development Services Department. His first day was on the November 6th, so it's been a little while now. But he's been working for us for about a month, doing a great job, replacing Tom Barker, who left. His experience includes working for Total Electric Service as a journeyman electrician and the cabinet shop as a construction worker. Adam has a journeyman's electrician's license, so it's great to have you on board and have you contributing. And we just want to welcome Adam to the city, the council, and people who might be tuning in at home who will be working with him, since he will be doing building inspection for the city. So join me in welcoming Adam.
Thank you, Adam. Mayor's comments. Employee recognition. Bonnie Sabo, wastewater, 5 years. Congratulations, Bonnie. H, Common Council. Any comments from the council? Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity because in the finance, budget, and personnel minutes, you'll notice that we are approving for the police to have a service dog for the school resource officers. And I just wanted to acknowledge the police department for accepting this donation, but also they had a lot of paperwork they had to go through with the schools, with the unions, with the city, and they stayed the course to do it. And so thank you for your hard work for that, because I think it's going to be a great bridge building with students.
Thank you, Alderman Tompkins. Any other council comments? Seeing none, City Administrator's update.
Thank you. I just have two things this evening. First of all, the tax bills are going out right now, and you'll likely get questions. I'm speaking to council members and the mayor at this point from citizens. You know, we've had a lot happen. We've had the revaluation of property that's made a difference, and we've also had the school tax levy went down considerably. That kind of altered things as well. So if you get questions from citizens, don't feel like you need to answer them. Certainly send them to city staff. We can address them. I'd be happy to talk to people. I'm sure Jennifer Selensky, our finance director, could speak with them as well. Don't feel like you need to answer those questions as to what caused the change in the tax bill. And then secondly, looking ahead to the meetings for next week, we're setting them up right now. The plan has been finance, budget, and personnel at 5:30 and council at 6. But looking at the finance agenda, there are not a lot on there right now, and the items seem to be ones that would have to be done over again in person at the council meeting, budget resolutions and those kind of things. So we're kind of thinking maybe it might be possible. I'm not asking for you to decide now, but to put those all into one meeting and just have a council meeting starting at 5:30, incorporating it all so that you only go through those items one time. And if there's a willingness to consider that, I would send out a note to everyone and the people who are not here, trying to see if that would work for them to do 5:30 at council and just have the one meeting.
And the Plan Commission is 7.
Plan Commission is at 7, and that will also, give us a little bit more free time, maybe on the back end, to have a break before they start. So look for an email coming from me soon, and please respond at your earliest convenience so we know if 5:30 would work for most of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And item J, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none, I will jump on the same preface as Alderman Tompkins. Thank you very much. I know that's a lot of hard work, and I've been watching on the sidelines, so I can hardly wait for this to come to fruition. Once again, we have the greatest town. All the great things that are happening here, it just keeps piling up more and more, and we love it. Thank you. Item K, consent agenda, meetings, minutes, and reports. Motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Varsho. Alderman Stalver, comment?
Mayor, I would like to remove Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting 23-144, the GIS position.
Do we need a motion to remove that?
Motion to approve the rest.
Okay, motion to approve the rest of the meeting, is it, agendas? And we have them, the same folks, Tompkins and Varsho. Please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Motion passes. Action on items removed from the consent agenda, and that would be item 3 under the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Director of Public Works. They always do a fine job with analysis, options, and bringing us a recommendation. What I would like to do in this case, I was around when the GIS position was created, and I'm just kind of thinking back of all the heavy lifting that was required back in those days. It was an enormous effort, and then actually bringing someone in to manage it, manage the data that was collected. But during the presentation, we learned that the Marshfield utility also has a GIS coordinator position. And through a little bit of research, I learned that the city of Marshfield GIS coordinator does a lot of things, some highly confidential, maintenance of records and data, and some, like the mayor mentioned in the pre-council meeting, doing maps for Maple Fall Fest. So high priority, urgent, and not so high priority, nice to have. And I'm just wondering with maybe just kind of a reset in what the city does as a whole, including the utility, if we should look at how we service the needs for GIS. And a couple of examples that were brought up during the presentation. GIS is used for Mackey. The school district relies on the city of Marshfield for GIS services. I didn't realize that until the finance meeting. Public Works, of course, wastewater, street lighting. Didn't know that either. That would seem to me to fall under the Marshfield utility as far as GIS requirements, but that was listed as a demand against the city of Marshfield GIS coordinator. A couple of other thoughts I have. If we fill the position entry level, you're looking at $100,000 fully loaded. It's a competitive field. Kind of like in the IT field, I doubt very much that we'll find someone at entry level. I think we'll find ourselves in a competitive race to fill that position. The other thoughts I have, just kind of thinking outside the box, and I don't know if these are possible, but maybe a self-service option, so it's less demanding on the individual staff person who maintains the GIS. In other words, can you make certain things available to the users? I know we do it at work. We've got a huge database, and if I need a report, I go and pull that report. I don't need to have someone in marketing or IT do it for me. Shared support, maybe, coordinate in the spirit of cooperation with the utility, school district, maybe a technical college, maybe the university. And then also just the prioritization of requests. Again, my work, if I want something out of the IT department, I fill out a form, it gets prioritized and gets assigned, and they get to it when they can. And I don't know if that type of process exists with the city of Marshfield. So I'm just kind of rambling on with a lot of things from the private sector that I've known, and also my history with the GIS position and, former council. I just think it's a time to take a step back and maybe look at how we deliver this service. And the nice thing about it, when you have a retiree or resignation in this case, you can do that kind of deeper dive without, termination of any employee or something like that. And finally, I would like to thank Mr. David Bueller for 11 years of service. That's commendable. So my motion would be to send this back to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for further evaluation.
So we have a motion on the floor by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman O'Reilly. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you. Item M, second reading of ordinance number 1506, rezoning property located at 1710 East 29th Street, parcel 33-03549-1 from LI Light Industrial to GI General Industrial, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. As you indicated, it's S&R Truck at 1710 East 29th, looking to have this change from light industrial to general industrial. I went through this a little bit in detail at the last meeting, so I'll be a little bit more high level this time. The property is used right now for a heavy industrial purpose, so it would fit with what the rezoning would be desired to achieve anyway. It would kind of be almost bringing this existing land use into conformance with the existing zoning code. If you look at the adjacent land uses, and this is covered in the memo, to the north and east, there is general industrial. To the south and west, it's outside of the city limits. To the west, it's another manufacturer. To the south, it's undeveloped property. So there's nothing really that would conflict with surrounding properties in terms of this being designated general industrial. If you look at the comprehensive plan, the 2017 to 2037 plan for future land uses, it is designated as general industrial. The thought being that it would include uses of this type, and it would be compatible with what the proposed rezoning is intended to achieve. So without questions, I'll leave it at that. And the recommendation is approval of ordinance number 1506.
We have a motion on the floor by Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Wagner. Any discussion? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There was some commentary about this in the packet about having a gravel driveway in there now. Would they be at this point required to do another curb cut or another travel to get it in there? To get off of 29th Street into this?
I don't know about a curb cut. Certainly gravel would be allowed for some of the parking area in this district. I'm not sure about a curb cut at this moment.
Has the Public Works Department had to address this or engineering maybe? I think there's only one curb cut over to the west side.
They've made no request for an additional driveway access or curb cut with this at this point that I'm aware of.
That won't require any further action, though, will it?
That typically is handled administratively. So they haven't made that type of request.
In other words, if they bring it into you, you'll
we take a look at it. Yeah,
okay.
we take a look at their options and such.
Yeah, I was just curious when I was looking at the map earlier this afternoon. So, thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item N, first reading of ordinance number 1505, remote precipitation, excuse me.
Right, that's right.
Boy, that's a tough word this morning. I'm not sure why. Okay. I'm going to start again. I'm sorry. Item N, first reading of ordinance number 1505, remote participation in meetings of the council and city committees, boards, and commissions, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Well, you know, as before 2020, when COVID broke, we didn't allow remote participation in these meetings. I don't know that we even thought about it. You were either here or you weren't. When COVID broke in March of 2020, soon after that, the governor of the state of Wisconsin directed, quite frankly, local governments to have their meetings remotely if possible, to avoid congregating and perpetuating the health concerns that came from COVID-19. And most cities and villages, I believe, complied, and you know, life went on that way for quite a while. Well, I think we realized that there's a benefit to that in allowing people to participate, in some cases remotely, and yet we realized that more recently that we don't have a policy, and that there needs to be a policy that governs that. When the city clerk was at a conference late this summer, she encountered, this is kind of about the time that we had a circumstance here where we had to end a meeting prematurely because of an internet connection with someone participating remotely. she began talking with her peers and doing some checking and found that a lot of municipalities, maybe a majority of municipalities, have some kind of policy that governs remote participation. Again, not in an attempt to outlaw or prohibit it, but to set some parameters and expectations for how it would work. So we feel it's reasonable to go down that road as well. I think it's indicated in the memo that I wrote based upon her representation that of the 17 replies that she got to an email that she sent out to her clerks network, 13 of them allow remote participation, but they have some restrictions on them, whether they allow it in closed session or whether they allow the members participating remotely to count toward a quorum. So there's a lot of different issues that come up when you're looking at remote participation that we want to make sure that we address. So you have proposed ordinance number 1505 in your packet for first reading and discussion tonight. I'm just going to hit on the highlights, and most of these are bullet pointed in your memo if you're looking at that. But this would apply to all members of the council and commissions, boards, and committees. Right now, we do have a couple of others that allow remote participation. We've had it in Plan Commission, we've had it in Economic Development Board, perhaps elsewhere as well, where we've allowed people to be on vacation or they've been remote for work or whatever, they've been able to join us. Remote meeting participants are counted toward the determination of a quorum, which is critical tonight if you look at it. Without Councilmember Spears being online, we wouldn't be able to have this meeting. So that's an important point of the ordinance. We do want 1 day notice to the clerk, if possible. That's the expectation, unless something arises that's kind of an emergency, if you will. And that's so that we can plan for it, working with Eng and his group in IT to make sure we have things set up and that we're ready for handling remote participation. Remote participation is generally limited to no more than 3 consecutive weeks. And, there's ways beyond that to talk to the mayor and talk about different situations that come up. But for the most part, remote participation is not expected to be an ongoing event long-term. Participants are responsible for their own audio and video internet connection on their end. That is critical. We have internet here. We have some things that come up from time to time on our end, but sometimes people are away in places that are difficult to get connection. You might be, far away. You might be out in a rural area. And if you're going to participate remotely, you have to have a good connection to make that work on your end. If a participant loses connection for some reason, they will have been deemed to have left the meeting voluntarily, and the meeting will go on without their participation. That sounds harsh, I realize, but it's kind of it's a privilege to be able to participate remotely and not a right per se, if I can use that phrase. We want you to, but if it's distracting because there's cutting in and out and other problems, the mayor may choose, or whoever the chair of that meeting is may choose to end the participation of that member of the meeting. No one can chair a meeting if they participate remotely. We've actually done that a little bit informally with a couple of committees and I believe the council as well. It's too difficult for the chair to be remote in terms of being able to coordinate what's going on in the room. I mentioned that the meeting chair could be disconnecting someone if it causes undue influence and interference with the meeting. We also want participants in closed session to make sure that there's no one else within earshot or in the room. Obviously closed session is intended to be confidential, privileged information, and you need to be secure away from family members, whoever else might be in the area. And then proper virtual meeting etiquette must be maintained. And I failed on this myself the other day by not muting when I was not speaking, being visible on the camera. By the way, I'm speaking to myself as much as anybody because I participated a couple of times and had some struggles. So these are the kind of things that we want to put in place to make sure that we allow remote participation, but we make sure that the meetings can be conducted in a way that is professional and appropriate and successful. So this ordinance is put forth to you for discussion tonight, comments, questions, and it would be brought back on January 9th for the second reading and potential adoption. I didn't schedule it for next Tuesday because I think it's good for the body to have a little bit more time to chew on this one, since it definitely affects the operation of these meetings and the way they're conducted.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me, Alderman O'Reilly is number first.
Oh, sorry.
That's quite all right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree that there's some of these issues that should definitely be worked through in a policy arrangement. I am a little concerned about stopping at a certain point because of situations like tonight where we would not be able to have a meeting. I think there's some good discussion that can happen about closed session because that is a concern. You don't know necessarily who is listening on the outside. But I guess I just wanted to stress the point that we don't need to not have quorums because of this. And I'm not aware of any significant issues we've had other than technical issues. So from that perspective, from an operational standpoint, I don't have a problem with it continuing to happen, but I agree we should talk about some of those other issues.
Alderman Stauber.
Thanks for bringing this forward, Jessica. I pretty much support it. The question I have, though, is when you alluded to about a quorum, and I wonder if we'd want to make an exception. Let's say if someone is out of pocket for 3 weeks and the fourth week maybe wouldn't qualify to participate remotely, but we would not have a quorum. Would we make an exception in that case?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could do that. If something happened tonight where, for example, Councilmember Spiros could not participate, we'd have a lot of things stopping that we would want to move forward. A lot of the things approved in the consent agenda and the regular agenda would have to wait, and we don't like to see business not be transacted. I guess it's something we could talk about.
Alderman Wagner.
Really?
Yes, sir. Now you're up.
For real, thank you very much.
Yep,
Okay.
you got the bat and ball.
There were a couple of things on this draft that I would question. One of them was we could have been facing an extended situation with our own mayor for some time ago. That could have happened. It didn't, thank God, but it could be. If we do this, we should probably have a procedure. We can leave the 3-meeting exception in there, but we could write an exception to it for a medical reason approved by the council or something like that. I'd like to see something like that added to it. The other one, and this one drives me nuts with the technical glitches we've had. We've determined in a lot of cases those technical glitches are on the part of the councilman, the remote councilman, as opposed to what's going on here in this room. It says quite rightly if they get, we had to figure out some way to handle this, and then quite rightly you're saying if we lose that communication for any reason, it will be deemed to have that alderman had left the meeting. My question is, can they come back? Or are they gone for good? If they can overcome the technical problem and get back on, can they do it? Or should we allow it or not? And that's something I think we need to address. Okay. Aside from that, there are other things, but I'll leave them for right now.
If I can comment on the first thing you said, if you look at it's B at the bottom of the first page under 4. It does say that unless the member demonstrate good cause is determined by the mayor, and I think we can look at that. I mean, in a reasonable way. You talk about things like health issues and other things. We're not looking to prohibit someone from participating if there's a reason why they can't be present, but. We can argue about what good cause would be, but there is a provision in there to make an allowance.
Okay.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. Hep, I'd be interested in your analysis on the exceptions and legality of how that would work out.
I was consulted in regard to this, and a lot of this is policy decisions, so it's not a legal question, meaning what do you want to do? You could have no restrictions if you chose, and that's so almost all of this falls within that category. Jess had worked with this and got some idea what other places were doing, and frankly, we've got a fairly liberal policy compared to what other places have. So I think that's part of it. Other than that, I have commented there were some things that were changed that I did suggest, and they've been addressed. And one of the bigger questions, and frankly, this is probably the middle of the road in terms of what happens if you don't follow the policy. In other words, there's the options of some kind of sanction or something, but it isn't an automatic, that you're going to be fined or something along those lines. But Otherwise, yeah, I did review it and was careful though not to interject, anything in terms of policy, because this is a creation of a policy that this body is really put in your 2 cents, and if you see or want something changed, somebody needs to make a motion or direct that to be considered.
Okay, thank you. I guess where my concern lies is a policy that's left to discretion, whether if someone is sick, how sick do they have to be? If, there's a lot of things that we could run into a lot of trouble without having a concrete policy on this. So it concerns me, is all I wanted to get at with that.
Okay, Rebecca, Steve wants to make one comment and then you'll be up next, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify one of the other points, though, that Ed had raised, was that the idea of someone could they jump back into the meeting? Is that just a policy issue for this body, or is there a legal issue with someone being out of a meeting for a while and then coming back?
I don't think it creates the legal. There's a technical part of that. One of the things, and this sort of really was something that I jumped on when we had somebody fall off. And one of the concerns I had is I wanted a way to say that once that happens, we are going to assume that they've left that meeting voluntarily and they're gone. And the reason is that we don't want to be getting into whose fault was it? Is it something they have on their end? Is it something we have on our end? If we have a policy that allows you some latitude in attending remotely, if you fall off the line, that we can go ahead and have that meeting and not be trying to bring somebody in for the distractions, et cetera. So while you could put some type of exception for somebody to come back in, with the exception of that being if you can't, you'd have a problem if you did that in a closed session. I wouldn't recommend you doing that where somebody's off and you're trying to bring them back in, because creating that record is even more difficult in that setting. On the other hand, there was something to be said about the finite situation where somebody's off, they're off, and you're not struggling with how to bring them back in. And then here's what your problem is. Somebody who's away from the meeting and then you bring them back in, there's a question of what do they know then? So if you're involved in a discussion and they're offline and you have a discussion, now they haven't been present for that discussion. So that creates problems. So based on that, my recommendation was sort of when they're off, and we treat them as off. If somebody wants to come back on, they may do it, but I don't think that we should then be putting them back into voting and those sorts of things because of that risk. Now, you could then, if it happens and you want to accommodate that, you could probably create a record by saying, here's what happened when they were off, or there was no discussion when they were off, and you create a record to do that. But you start getting into doing some real fancy stuff to try to accommodate somebody that dropped offline so that we can continue going forward. And that's another problem with, as soon as you start going into, like you say, an exception that says with somebody's sick, the only thing is there are a lot of things we do here that probably are somewhat informal along the lines of Robert's rules. And we get along, we do it, and most of the time there's not a problem. So having something being discretionary like that, that's where you get back to what I mentioned before was, when this first came up, I had said to both Steve and Jess that if you leave this on here where you can only attend 3 meetings, and this is an ordinance, technically somebody could be cited by the police department if you violate that. Okay, so do you want to have it at that? Now, that's very rigid, but it also is very clear, like what you're asking for, and I'm not sure you want to go there. That's why I said I stayed out of this from the standpoint that it's really this body that should make those rules, be as strict as you want, and be as, if you choose to be absolutely clear that this is the rule, we're not going to allow you to be sick for an exception, or if you want to, then you've got to deal with those nuances of how sick is somebody, how do you make that judgment? If you're going to be liberal, then you build it into the rules and live with that.
Alderman Spiros.
Hello. Just a couple of comments about the policy. I think a policy is a fine idea. I do not want to have a limit on the amount of weeks for a lot of the reasons that Hap just stated. Or if you do have a limit, that the exception be granted by the city commission or the city administrator or the person acting in his position. I don't like to get into the weeds of what's a good enough excuse to be gone. Is it a personal illness? Is it because your family all lives out of state and your mother is dying? Is it that you take your 25th anniversary vacation and it's longer than 3 weeks? I mean, you have the option here. Either the person participates remotely or they just say they can't attend. I certainly know if I'm going to be remote more than 3 weeks, I'm not going to be getting a ticket by the police. I just will not attend the 4th week. So I think that's just not smart to do anything like that. And I think the rest of it, I think, was okay. I didn't have a big problem with it. Obviously, I think the person should be counted towards a quorum. As far as the technical difficulties, I beg to differ. I think most of the technical difficulties have come from the city's standpoint. At least a few times I've run into technical difficulties has been coming from the city issue. So I don't know about whether, coming back in and going back out of the meeting. I mean, I think clearly if you can tell there's technical difficulties happening and it's on the part of the city, if the person tries a few more times to get in, I think it would just behoove you to let the person into the meeting, especially when you know the technical difficulties are coming from your side of the globe and you have an IT director there that can work on those issues. And I think that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Alderman Tompkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 2 points. One is a question. So the 3 weeks in attendance, or can only be 3 weeks remote, I'm just wondering what you found in other municipalities in their codes. And did they have any reasoning or justification behind that?
So I didn't go into justification or the rationale as to why. Most municipalities allow 1 meeting, period. And many allow 1 per calendar year even. So when we said that we're very liberal in this policy, we really are giving a lot of leniency compared to what our other municipalities are doing.
All right, thank you. And then just one comment. I do feel like there needs to be some sort of, if we're going to put a boundary on this, if we do that, then there needs to be a next step. Otherwise, why are we putting the boundary on? So I know we have in one of our ordinances, it says if we miss too many meetings, we will not get paid. So there's a consequence. So I feel like this has to have something in it. Otherwise, why are we doing it?
Yeah, and just to note, the reason why we did this as an ordinance rather than a policy is because, there's a broader perspective here having to do with the operation of meetings and quorums and those kind of things that we really want to make sure that we are safeguarding. But you're right. We do have that policy in effect right now that if you miss 2 of your 4 meetings in the month between your council meetings and your committee meetings, Board of Public Works or Finance, that you do get docked $100 for that. We could have put something like that in here, similar to that. But yeah, I guess we felt that the main emphasis of this is trying to just put some parameters of what's expectations and see how that goes. But I get your point. There is no hammer that comes from this right now in the ordinance.
Okay, next Alderman Stauber, Alderman Wagner, then Alderman Spiros.
Regarding technical difficulties, I'm probably the guy who caused the trouble. I was at our place up north, and it seems like when the wind blows, I lose internet connection. And I thought I was doing my job by trying to participate, and the mayor and I were texting, and I'm trying to scramble to get back on. But I should have come to the realization that it maybe wasn't in my best interest or your all's best interest for me to attempt to get back on. I should have just said, next time I'm remote at the cabin, for example, don't plan to participate, find a different way to dial in. But other than that, I don't know of any technical issues that has caused problems outside of the city. I guess I'm kind of wondering about Alderman Spiro's comment about the problems generating from the city. I'm not familiar with that.
Actually, I can jump in because I was at home recovering when we had a meeting down there with the folks and we couldn't hear anything. So the meeting went on without us that were listening remotely. We couldn't hear anything that was going on because of technical difficulty. You guys were scrambling. It took almost 25 minutes, I believe, even to get the meeting started. Remember that night?
Yeah.
Thank you, because then I'm not, where I am not should be. So, so I'm assuming that is probably what it probably entails, right, Rebecca? Yes, absolutely. We hope that we can get these things solved and just move on. But again, maybe it's only windy one night out of the year. The rest of them you can put in a big bag. You wouldn't have to worry about not missing a meeting. But it's none of us know. I mean, anything can happen anywhere. But Rebecca, don't let it happen tonight, okay? Thank you. So I apologize for stepping in front of Auditor Wagner, but I just knew that was something I needed to say. So Alderman Wagner, you're up.
No problem, ma'am. Thank you very much. I didn't think about this until Alderman from the third brought it up and told us that, and again, the idea is what mechanisms do we have for disciplining aldermen in our code? I mean, what can we do? Can we make them stand in front of their and recite their ABCs or something? I don't know. I will once again fall upon the expertise of the learned counsel for an answer to that. That's you.
Go ahead.
I mean, so that applies to many different rules that you have, right? We could have somebody who's out of order under Robert's rules. And so, first of all, the chair can handle most of that. There is also what amounts to similar to a public censure, where you could literally, issue a formal reprimand. In theory, I think you can, based on a vote of the body, could probably, again, suspend somebody's payment for that particular meeting or something along those lines. But you'd have to actually take action to do that. We don't have a built-in mechanism. And I think you won't find very many places that do that. It's sort of, let's make sure that we create a punishment that fits the violation and try to do that without an assumption that there's going to be a rigid process for doing that. Right. Not that you couldn't, but then when you do that, if you do that for missing a meeting, there's many other types of things like that, talking over one another, arguing, not relinquishing the gavel, all of those sorts of things. And we've, fortunately, in the last year, we haven't had a whole lot of that, but there was a time where there were things where people were objecting because the chair was speaking without relinquishing the gavel and those kinds of things.
I just want to counter a little bit with that, and that is that I know Russ and Mike and I have been around long enough where we've sat here on many a night and said, well, look, they gave us this policy to enforce and there's no way of enforcing it. Or, and I guess I just don't want 15 years from now somebody calling us a bunch of idiots because we put something out that had no enforcement. So I just want you to think about that before this thing comes back to us and see what we can do about that. See if we can at least mention some kind of administrative sanction of some sort or another to do that. Okay, thank you. And thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Alderman Spiros?
Thank you. I just want to address this whole punishment. First of all, the whole word sounds ridiculous to me. We're a group of adults. We're not employees. We've been elected by the people, and they continue to elect us. If they don't want to elect you, they won't elect you at the next election. So I think this idea of a punishment, first of all, if you miss that many, if you attend 3 meetings and you miss the 4th and you miss anything else, you're already going to have doc pay. That's already covered under another policy. But I won't support this at all. If there's anything even remotely in there about disciplining us, I am not your child, nor is anybody else that's going to be attending meetings. We are attending meetings. It's just we're attending them in a different progressive way, which is pretty common nowadays. So I just think that whole terminology is inappropriate for this type of discussion. You're not my father. I don't need to be disciplined.
Steve?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Councilmember Spiro said, but the fact that our intent with this ordinance is not to be punitive. It's to set expectations, whether it be that you have a good internet connection or the behavior that you might have and who's around you when you're, in these meetings. Is it distracting? And I think the number of meetings, weeks of meetings that you missed was thrown in as something else that I think is a reasonable expectation. Do you get put in stocks in the middle of town if you don't do that, or you put in jail or anything like that? And that's not the intent. The intent is to have reasonable expectations that we can uphold and say, this is the basis under which we allow remote participation in meetings. Hopefully that addresses our motive here.
Any other lively discussion? Seeing none, we'll bring this back.
Oh, I think Rebecca's.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca?
I just want to say that I agree with what Steve just said. The premise is to set some expectations on, making sure you're by yourself in the room when you're in a meeting, making sure you have a good internet connection. If you're somewhere and you don't have a good internet connection and you can't go somewhere to have a good internet connection, you should have you should have that witherall to make sure that you tell them that you're not going to be at the meeting. I mean, that's just kind of grown-up behavior that should take place naturally and normally for most people. So I agree with the premise of what you're saying wholeheartedly. But that's I guess the only thing I have left to say.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will take this up again January 9th meeting. Item O, request to approve proposed list of election inspectors and special voting deputies for a 2-year term, calendar years 2024 to 2025, presented by Jessica Schiffrel, City Clerk.
Thank you. So in your packet, you had a list of election inspectors that I did submit for your approval. Every December of every odd year, we bring forth our list of election inspectors to use for the next 2-year election cycle. You'll see just a couple of names submitted by the Democratic Party for use and a handful submitted by the Republican Party for use. Everyone else is considered nonpartisan, just on the simple basis that they were not submitted to us this election cycle by one of the parties. So moving forward for the next 2 years, these are the election inspectors we would anticipate using. If at any time we have new workers come to us who are interested in working, we would sign an oath with them and go through the process a little bit differently, but this is our anticipated list for the bulk of the people we'll use. So I look for your approval this evening.
Motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you for the report, Jess. Item P, request to approve contract renewal with MEUW and continue partnerships with MEUW's Regional Safety Management Program through calendar year 2027, presented by Sarah Dreschel, Human Resources Director, and Sean Wall, MEUW.
Good evening, everyone. So at the last Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting this last week, a request was made to present to the Common Council the MEUW contract and just more information regarding the services that they provide. So we were able to ask Sean from MEUW to come and have that discussion with you guys tonight. There was in the packet for Finance, Budget, and Personnel, as well as this one, additional information that was provided regarding the contract and information as far as like basic services that they do provide. And then I don't want to steal any of Sean's thunder, so I will turn it over to him for the presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we'll try to keep the thunder down there. Overdid that there, but I appreciate it. My name is Sean Wall. I figured I'd give a little bit of an intro to myself, what I do, and some of the duties that I have for the city. I understand that there are some questions as well. So hopefully I can give you a little bit more of a background, a little more of an understanding of the jobs that I'm all doing for the city, and then kind of open up to questions if that's okay.
Perfect.
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Sean. I've been doing safety. I was with Kraft Foods in Wapaka for about 14 years in safety and training, and I'm entering my 10th year with MEUW, Senior Regional Safety Coordinator. So along with the city of Marshfield, I also handle the city of Medford, Marshfield Utilities, Wisconsin Rapids Utilities, city of Clintonville, and New London Utilities. So make my way around the state quite a bit, a lot of traveling. MEUW as a whole, we are the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin. A little bit of a mouthful, hence MEUW. We are here with the city mainly because of the electric utility. The electric utility has been one of our members for quite some time. And we were working with, as far back as Bob Trusoni, working to get the city into the program, realizing there's a need, realizing that there are hazards in the workplace that we felt that we could make a difference with. So working with Bob in the past and having meetings with the leaders and department heads for the city, we were able to come in about 4 years ago, started out with another coordinator, and then I came in roughly 3 years ago. So I've been serving here for about 3 years. Physically, I'm here once a week for the city specifically. Thankfully, though, benefit for the utility and with the city because I'm here with the city as well. Kind of double dipping a little bit with the city overall of Marshfield, that I'm here two days a week, roughly. Again, depending upon vacations and training and whatnot. So physically being here 1 day a week, but it's also a 24/7 type of job. So it's that constant contact. If there's a question on a day that I'm not here, all of my department heads here know if you got a question, shoot me a text. And I have constant communication with those department heads, as well as a lot of with the employees as well, who I've become close with over the years, which is honestly a critical part of my job, really developing those relationships with our employees. That's one of the hardest parts coming in, building a safety culture, is really coming in and getting to know everybody and building that trust and respect. The first year I was here, I didn't touch any work sites. I didn't go out because I did not, and I make it known I am not the safety cop. When I'm coming out, I'm not looking for things that people are doing wrong. I'm looking for opportunities that we have out there and gaps that we can close to ensure our employees are working safe. Part of that comes down, I try to keep my training to a monthly topic. That monthly topic does vary quite a bit depending upon the department, depending upon needs, depending upon the hazards. The streets department has quite a bit in regard to excavation, trenching hazards, whereas wastewater maybe doesn't have that much. Confined space training, fall protection training. There's also, and along with the training, there's the documentation part, which I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of, but we have to have that. Of course, the Department of Safety and Professional Services, the DSPS, I'll be mentioning them a couple times here and there. The DSPS, to put that, usually everybody knows OSHA right away. OSHA is basically a federal umbrella. The state of Wisconsin falls under the DSPS. DSPS has basically adopted all of the OSHA regulations. So DSPS and OSHA really essentially go hand in hand. So making sure we have the documentation for all the training that we're taking care of, making sure we have the written programs that are required, not only having them, but then when reviewing them with our department heads. We actually recently just had that meeting. Making sure those programs are up to date, reviewed annually. Handling the state regulatory auditing. Over the last 4 years, we have actually had the DSPS come in here twice for audits and inspections. Thankfully, we were able to pass both of those really well due to the safety program that we have and the departments that we have. It's also creating, maintaining, monitoring changes within the safety program overall, making sure when the state brings new things to order, I can communicate those down to our employees and make sure we're meeting those regulations the way we need to. Doing field audits, inspections, doing facility inspections, helping Sarah and Peggy with incident reporting, incident investigation, root cause failure analysis. So when people get hurt, we're trying to find out, A, are they okay? I mean, that's the ground floor. We want to make sure our employees are okay. Then we need to find out, what can we do to prevent this from happening? So there's a bigger part with incident reporting, incident investigation, being that support for Sarah and Peggy. And then as I touched on as well, being that safety resource for our employees. Building that trust to begin with, again, and it's throughout different industries. I've been doing this long enough, you get the wrong stigma going. And I've met other people in this profession where people are more fearing the safety guy coming in. Oh no, here comes Sean. Everybody quick, put your hard hats on, put your earplugs in. Yeah, I don't want that. I want them to know via our training, via our relationships that Sean's saying that we should be wearing hearing protection. We should be doing it. This is my hearing. I want to protect it. So it's really making sure we communicate that. And a lot of that does come down to the training topics that we have. I know there's a lot of training that we have. Hearing some of the comments and questions from the previous meeting regarding fire department training, possibly having the fire department come in and do some training classes. There is definitely some overlap. I'll be the first to admit that one. When it comes to CPR, I've been doing CPR training. I was originally trained through the Red Cross. Currently trained through the Gold Cross out of Appleton. The training that we do is really layman CPR. So the fire department coming in, police department coming in, the CPR and work that they're doing with that far exceeds what I do. Far exceeds. They handle it a lot more. They have a lot more of those hazards in their jobs that they're responsible for, that they need that training for. Whereas in the utility industry, the city industry, we're really hitting the big hitters, heart attacks, injuries out in the field. How are we handling those? And basically doing CPR and making sure our employees know how to do that. So when they call 911 and the professionals come in, we've done what we can to maintain that person. I'm not teaching anybody to be an EMT. I'm out in the field doing things that, hey, we're doing things that we need to do to make sure they know how to get this person to be okay for the big guys to come in. So that's generally speaking, again, top level of where I'm at. So I guess I'll open it up to the council then, and just any questions you may have, I will do my best to answer.
Any questions from the council? Alderman Stauber.
Just one question. In your letter to Chris Hawley, you mentioned if we wish to change our level of services for future years. So are the services that are provided to the city of Marshfield high, low, right in the middle, or what do you mean by changing services?
When we first came into the city of Marshfield, it was really brought in that let's make sure we're hitting our streets department, our wastewater department, our parks department. We also had engineering wrapped in as well. Coming in with those departments with the potential that maybe there's some other opportunities where we can increase that coverage. At this point, I don't know of anything. It's kind of maintained flat where we are, which is good. I feel like the city of Marshfield, with the amount of employees that we have here, I think the services, we're pretty much right in line with the other cities that I do take care of.
Okay, so I understand now. I thought maybe it had something to do with the services you provide, the menu of items that you train on.
No, it was more potentially bringing in other departments. But no, the level is pretty much the same throughout. Now, granted, there might be some streets probably has a few more trainings to do than parks, but then parks may have other trainings that they get that streets doesn't get. We do a very extensive needs assessment when we first come in to ensure that we're doing the trainings that we need for the hazards that are present. The last thing we want to do is come in and do training for someone and they're looking at me going, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with us. we want to make sure it's a very directed safety program that addresses the hazards that directly affect them.
Oh, thank you. And the other question I have is the recommendation is at the council discretion. So is there something that we should know that we would want to debate this? Or is there a recommendation that's not stated?
Sorry, I'm not that tall. No, I just put that. I know that the packet mentions moving this forward and renewing the contract. I wanted to, in my memo, keep it open to if there was further discussion that was needed, if we needed to move it to a different finance budget personnel meeting or a different council meeting, things like that. So that was the reason for my comment.
So you think it's a good thing we should approve it?
100%.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Administrator Berg?
Yeah, I think the other thing that may have been intended at one point was the fact that the proposal is for a 4-year agreement, 2024 through the end of 2027. I mean, you could look at modifying that, but we're strongly recommending the full 4 years as laid out in the previous memos.
And so we have a motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Stauber. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros? Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Item Q, appointment Michael Wagle, 714 North Cedar Avenue to the Historic Preservation Commission to complete a vacant term ending April 2025, presented by me. As you see in your packet, we'll make the decision at the next meeting, which is December 19th. Thank you, Mike, for stepping up we need to fill this through 2025. So we will revisit this in our next meeting, which is next week. Item R, suggested items for future agendas. Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to legality in which it is or is likely to become involved. Claim for recovery of unlawful taxes, and closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The first bullet is contract for services for implementation of West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, and the second bullet is update discussion related to possible development in Mill Creek Business Park. We have a motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Varsho. Please vote to go into closed session.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
We are in closed session.